My name is Lucy. Standing at the departure gate of the airport, holding my passport tightly in my hand, I'm about to embark on a journey to Edinburgh. Just then, a customs officer near the gate glances at my passport photo, looks up at me, and pauses. She asks me to step aside for a moment. My heart drops instantly. After all I've been through, I'm terrified that something has gone wrong. But then she looks at me carefully and says she recognizes me. She was the officer who processed my original booking months ago when I did a pre-clearance check online. She remembered my name and said she'd wondered what had happened to me when I never showed up for my original flight. Standing right there in the departure hall, I briefly tell her what I've endured. She falls silent for a moment, then picks up her stamp, presses it firmly into my passport, slides it back across the counter, and simply says, "Have a wonderful life." As I watch her walk away, my mind drifts back to a time when my dreams seemed so close yet were brutally snatched away. I grew up in a small town. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were traditional and controlling. My father was a strict businessman who believed in keeping a tight rein on the family finances. My mother was a housewife, but she was the real decision maker at home. They had this idea that I was there to serve the family, to be a constant presence in the house. I was determined to change my life. I got an acceptance letter from the University of Edinburgh. For 3 long years, I worked night shifts at a local bookstore. I saved every single cent, skipped all the social events, and wore the same old clothes. I told myself over and over that all these sacrifices were worth it. Finally, everything was in place. The ticket, the visa, and the savings of $15,000 were all ready. The acceptance letter was neatly folded in my carry-on. The night before my flight, I was in my room, doing a final check. Passport, ticket confirmation, bank statements, student visa. I'd gone through this checklist so many times that I could recite it in my sleep. I set my alarm for 4:30 a.m. Said a quiet prayer, and let myself feel a glimmer of hope that I hadn't felt in years. I fell asleep with a smile on my face. But at 2 a.m. I was jolted awake by the sound of my bedroom door opening. My mother was standing there, her arms crossed, her face wearing that cold, controlling expression I'd feared since childhood. She held my passport in her hand as if it were a worthless piece of paper. I sat up in bed and asked her what she was doing. She simply said, "You're not leaving. Who will take care of your little brother? He needs someone to help with his studies and keep the house in order." My father then appeared behind her in the doorway and added in a cold voice that my 15-year-old brother, who was perfectly capable of taking care of himself, needed me more than I needed my own future. I begged them. I told them how long I'd saved, how hard I'd worked, and how this opportunity would never come again. But my mother just told me to go back to sleep, and my father refused to look me in the eye. They took my passport and closed the door. I sat there in the dark, listening to the silence of the house that had just swallowed 3 years of my life. I missed my flight. I watched the departure time come and go on my phone while sitting on the kitchen floor in my pajamas. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I went to my room and cried for 3 days straight. On the 3rd day, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The red-eyed, defeated girl staring back at me made me realize that I couldn't let this happen. I decided to go to the embassy. I took the bus alone, which felt like a huge step after 3 days of being paralyzed by despair. The embassy waiting room was cold and filled with the harsh glow of fluorescent lights. Strangers sat around, staring at their phones. I took a number and sat down to wait. When my number was called, I walked up to the counter and calmly explained my situation to the officer on the other side of the glass. I told her about the passport, the flight, and the 3 years of savings. I was only expecting a little sympathy, but what she told me made my hands go numb. She said that a passport issued to an adult belongs to that adult alone. No parent, no family member, and no authority outside of the government has the legal right to withhold it. She also explained that withholding an adult's passport is considered a form of coercion in the eyes of the law, and I had every right to report it and demand its return. She slid a printed form across the counter and told me to fill it out carefully. She also gave me the number of a legal aid organization that dealt with cases where adult children were being unlawfully controlled. I sat in the waiting room for another hour, filling out the form with a hand that finally stopped shaking. When I handed it back, she stamped it and told me someone would be in touch within 48 hours. The next morning, I received a call from a woman named Emily from the legal aid office. She asked me to come in that afternoon. I went to her small office lined with filing cabinets. She listened to my story without interrupting once. When I finished, she folded her hands on the desk and said my case was straightforward. A formal written request would be sent to my parents, requiring them to return my passport within 72 hours or face legal consequences. She also helped me contact the university. To my disbelief, the admissions office said that given the circumstances, my enrollment could be deferred by 1 semester. I sat in Emily's office and cried again, but this time it was a cry of hope. My parents received the legal letter on a Thursday. I was in the house when it arrived. My father opened it at the kitchen table, and I watched the color drain from his face. My mother read it over his shoulder, and for the first time, I saw her completely speechless. Neither of them spoke to me directly. My mother put the letter down on the table and walked out of the kitchen. My father stared at the wall for a long time. By Friday evening, my passport was placed on my bed without a word, an apology, or any acknowledgement of what they had done. I booked a new flight for the following month. In the extra weeks, I reconfirmed my student housing, updated my visa dates with Emily's help, and started to separate my life from theirs. I opened my own bank account that they had no access to and changed the contact information on all my university documents. I told my little brother privately what had happened and why I was leaving. I promised him that he could call me anytime, anywhere. He hugged me for a long time, and I knew he understood. The morning of my new flight, I woke up before my alarm. I got dressed in the dark, carried my suitcase to the front door, and called a cab. I could hear my parents moving around in their bedroom, but neither of them came out. There was no goodbye, no last-ditch attempt to stop me, no apology. Just silence. As I stood there with my hand on the door handle, I realized that I'd been fooling myself for years, thinking their silence was a form of love. It was just the absence of love. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Now, as I stand at the departure gate, I know that I'm leaving behind a past full of control and oppression. I'm stepping into a future that I've fought so hard for. I'm ready to start my new life in Edinburgh, build a career, and surround myself with people who truly value me. My parents and I may never speak again, but that's the honest ending to a story that needed closure. If my story has moved you, hit that subscribe button, because every week, we share real stories of courage and the strength to pursue your dreams.